Chapter 2, Lesson 1, Part 2, Adding Integers with Different Signs. So adding integers with the different signs, just like when we added with the same sign, we have two methods to choose from. Method 1 is using the number line. So the same steps, find the first addend. So an example, negative 10 plus 4, we locate negative 10. And then step 2, we're moving to add the second addend. If positive, we go to the right. If negative, we go to the left. So I'm adding a positive 4. So you see they moved us 4 to the right, and we land on negative 6. Method 2, just like when adding with positive signs, we use absolute value. But this time we have a difference in step 2 where we actually subtract. So in method 2, we're finding the absolute value of both digits. The absolute value of negative 10 is positive 10. The absolute value of 4 is 4. So we have negative 10 minus negative 4 becomes 10 minus 4 because, again, in step 2, we're subtracting our digits. 10 minus 4 equals 6. So in the last step, we're going to go back and look at the original problem, negative 10 plus 4. Because our larger digit is negative, that means your answer will be negative. So we're always going to have to go back and look at our original problem to decide whether your answer is negative or positive. So let's look at number 28 using the absolute value method. Negative 14 plus 8. First, I'm finding the absolute value of each integer. Negative 14's absolute value is 14. 8's absolute value is 8. So that turns into a subtraction problem in step 2 with the larger digit first. So 14 minus 8. Do the subtraction, or what they're calling simplify. 14 minus 8 is 6. And then I'm going back to my original problem to determine whether my 6 is positive or negative. I have a negative 14 and a positive 8. 14 is larger than 8, so because that is negative, my answer is a negative 6. So over here you'd fill in using a negative sign because negative 14 has a greater absolute value. So we can practice with 29 and 30. Negative 15 plus 9. So first, the absolute value of negative 15 equals 15. The absolute value of 9 equals 9. So that becomes, next, the subtraction. 15 minus 9, which of course is 6. And now I'm going to look at my original problem. Negative 15 plus 9 equals, because 15 has a larger absolute value, our answer will be negative 6. Number 30 here. First, I'm going to do the absolute value of 7. 7, not 2. Is 7. The absolute value of negative 18 is 18. So I'm going to subtract, always putting the larger digit first. 18 minus 7 is 11. So my original problem was 7 plus negative 18. Because our larger digit is negative, our answer is negative 11. When adding more than 2 integers at a time, we're going to use the exact same process, no matter what method you choose. The only difference here is that we're going to start with the first 2 numbers, follow the method. Once we get the answer from adding our first 2 digits, then you'll incorporate the third. So negative 5 plus 7 plus negative 9, you're going to start where your first digit was, negative 5. And you're going to move right or left depending on whether you have positive or negative. So because we're adding a positive 7 here, we move to the right 7, where you see we land on 2. So negative 5 plus 7 equals 2. And now we're going to use that answer here, 2 plus negative 9. So back to our number line, we start at 2. And because we're adding a negative 9, you're going all the way to the left, 9 spaces, where you land on negative 7. So negative 5 plus 7 plus negative 9 is a negative 7. We can use method 2 the same way. Again, we're going to start with our first 2 digits and apply what we've learned. So first we're finding absolute value of both digits. The absolute value of 5. Negative 5 is 5. The absolute value of 7 is 7. So then we go to step 2 and subtract. 7 minus 5 is 2. We're keeping our answer of a positive 2 because our positive number is larger than our negative in this case. So now we move on with that answer of 2 and incorporate the last number, negative 9. So again, we start over at step 1, finding absolute value. Absolute value of 2 is 2. Negative 9 is 9. Then step 2, we subtract. 9 minus 2 is, of course, 7. And lastly, we're going to assign the value of the larger digit. So negative 9 is larger than 2, or 9 is larger than 2. So because it's negative, your answer is a negative 7. So we can practice a couple more. 9 plus negative 5 plus 8. So first, I'm finding absolute value of my first 2 digits. Absolute value of 9 is 9. The absolute value of negative 5 equals 5. So then I do my subtraction. 9 minus 5 equals 4. My 4 is going to stay positive because in my original 9 plus negative 5, 9 has a larger value than 5. So I move on and fill in. Now I have 4 plus 8. Because 4 and 8 have the same sign, I'm just simply going to add. 4 plus 8 is then 12. In number 32, they're showing you a slightly different method here. Instead of going straight across and doing negative 6 plus 2, they actually reordered and regrouped everything. So I have a negative 6 plus negative 8. So both of my negatives are together. So you're kind of going back to Chapter 2, Lesson 1, Part 1, where you're adding 2 digits with the same sign. So negative 6 plus negative 8, 6 plus 8 is 14, and since they're both negative, I'm adding negative, or placing the negative in front. So now I have negative 14 plus 2. So this is where I incorporate absolute value. The absolute value of negative 14 equals 14. The absolute value of 2 equals 2. So 14 minus 2 equals 2. And I look at my original problem of negative 14 plus 2 and assign that negative in front because 14 has a larger value than 2. I'm sorry, negative 12. Negative 12. I forgot to add my 1 in there. I apologize. So please try number 33 and 34 on your own. Click pause and then come back and check your answer. Negative 7 plus negative 8. Because they're both negatives, I'm just going to add them together. Do negative 15. Now I'll incorporate the 10. I'll do absolute value here. Negative 15 equals 15. The absolute value of 10 equals 10. 15 minus 10 is 5, of course. So look at my original problem of negative 15 plus 10. Because negative was larger, my answer would be negative 5 in this case. This is the final answer. Again, looking at number 34, I'm going to look at my 2 negatives that are next to each other first and just simply combine those to make it easier. Negative 6 plus negative 3 is negative 9. I just add my 2 digits, 6 and 3, and keep the negative. So now I have 4 plus a negative 9 Here I'll incorporate absolute value. The absolute value of negative 9 is 9. The absolute value of 4 is 4. 9 minus 4 equals 5. In my original problem here of 4 plus a negative 9, my negative has a larger value. So my final answer is again negative 5. You're going to be asked to do some real life problems or word problems that incorporate negative and positives as well. With these, I highly recommend you use method 2, just because they get to be larger numbers, and making a number line long enough just would take a lot of your time. So we're going to use keywords here. A helicopter rises 250 feet. I hear rises and I think positive. It's going up. So 250. So it rises 250 feet in the air, and then it descends 150 feet. So that means it's going down. So I'm adding a negative 150. And then rises 97 feet. So again, I'm adding 97 here. Okay, so they want to know what's the distance the helicopter rises or falls. This is where you might find it beneficial to just group your positives together. So you could rewrite this addition sentence as 250 plus 97 plus a negative 150. So 250 plus 97. I'm going to add that vertically just to make sure I'm making no mistakes. 0 plus 7 is 7. 5 plus 9 is 14. So that means 347 plus a negative 150. So now this is where I incorporate my absolute value. So absolute value of 347 equals 347. The absolute value of negative 150 equals 150. So I would do 347 minus 150. So I'm going to do that vertically again, just so I'm not making any mistakes. 7 minus 0, of course, is 7. I would need to borrow here since 4 is smaller than 5. So 14 minus 5 is 9, and 2 minus 1 is 97. So I'm going to look back at my original problem of 347 plus a negative 150. We said was 197. I'm going to look. 347 has a larger value than 150. So my answer is a positive 197 feet. Again, it's a word problem, so I like to use labels. So I highly suggest you try a couple more practice problems on your own. Practice using the absolute value and checking to make sure you have the right sign assigned to your final answer.